Most men live as if life were something that needs to be managed, controlled, or conquered. They wake up each morning carrying invisible weights, expectations, fears, regrets, the sense that they must hold everything together before it all falls apart. And yet, even when they achieve what they thought would bring peace, something inside still trembles. They can't explain it, but they know it. The more they try to hold on, the more life slips through their fingers. We've all been there, chasing stability and finding only exhaustion. But what if the problem isn't that life is unstable, but that we were never meant to make it stable in the first place? The common belief is that control brings safety, that if you can plan everything, nothing will surprise you and nothing will hurt you. But the truth is much more uncomfortable and also far more beautiful. Life was never meant to be a puzzle to solve. It's a wave meant to be surfed. The more you resist it, the more it punishes you. The more you flow with it, the more it reveals its hidden grace. The constant search for certainty is the very thing that keeps you anxious. You don't need to know what's coming. You only need to be awake enough to meet it when it arrives. If you've ever looked at your life and wondered why peace seems so fragile, remember this. Peace was never something to achieve. It was something to recognize. The man who finally understands this no longer fights the river. He learns to float, not because he gave up, but because he finally understood how nature works. That is the lesson most men never learn, and the reason they live half asleep, always chasing what cannot be caught. So before we go deeper, take a moment to breathe. If you've been feeling like you're losing control or that life keeps pulling you in directions you didn't choose, this reflection is for you. Subscribe, share, and leave a comment below. Not as a routine, but as a way of spreading awareness. When you do, you're not just helping this channel, you're helping another man somewhere out there who's also searching for meaning, but doesn't yet have the words for it. Stay with me, because before this video ends, you'll remember a truth that can change the way you live, and more importantly, the way you let life live through you. Since childhood, you were told that responsibility meant control, to master your emotions, plan your future, and keep chaos at bay. You learned to tighten your grip on everything, your relationships, your career, your reputation. The world taught you that if you let go, you'd fall apart, so you became a manager of outcomes, constantly adjusting, predicting, and correcting. But the more you tried to control, the more fragile everything became. Because control isn't power, it's tension. It's the silent fear that if you stop holding the pieces together, they'll scatter and reveal that you never had control in the first place. Think about it. Every man who clings too tightly eventually breaks. The one who plans every moment becomes a slave to his own plans. The one who tries to protect everyone ends up carrying pain that isn't his. The one who fears losing love holds it so tightly that it suffocates. This is the trap of control. It looks like strength, but it's born of fear. And fear can build no lasting structure. You may achieve comfort but not freedom. You may have order but no peace. Alan Watts once said that the desire for security and the feeling of insecurity are the same thing. The more you seek security, the less of it you have, because you begin to depend on the illusion that things could ever be fixed, that you could ever stand still in a world that's always in motion. The river doesn't stop for anyone. It carries you whether you fight or flow. And that's the beauty most men miss. Life is not asking you to control it, it's asking you to trust it. Imagine for a moment that you are standing at the shore of the ocean. You can't stop the tide from rising, but you can choose how you meet it. Some men build walls, others learn to swim. The difference between the two is not intelligence, it's surrender. Not weakness, but wisdom. The man who learns to surrender isn't giving up on life, he's aligning himself with it. That's where freedom begins, not when you master life, but when you stop fighting its nature. When you understand this, something shifts inside. You stop forcing outcomes and start witnessing them. You stop needing guarantees and start moving with awareness. The mind that once obsessed over what comes next begins to rest in what is now. And from that stillness, a different kind of strength appears. One that doesn't depend on control, but on understanding. Every man carries a silent contract with life, a list of things that must happen for him to feel fulfilled. If I reach this goal, then I'll be at peace. If she stays, then I'll be enough. If I succeed, then I'll finally rest. But the truth is, that peace never comes because it was built on conditions. The moment you attach peace to an outcome, it disappears the moment that outcome changes, and everything in life changes. You may not see it at first, but every expectation you set becomes a future disappointment waiting to happen. Life doesn't break your heart, your expectations do. There's a strange freedom that comes when you stop expecting the world to reward you for your effort. It doesn't mean you stop trying. It means you act because you are alive, not because you need proof of your worth. You give, you work, you love, not as transactions, but as expressions of what you already are. Most men don't realize that their constant frustration isn't caused by life being unfair, but by the belief that life owes them something for surviving it. But life owes nothing, and that's not cruelty. It's liberation. Because when you stop demanding from life, you begin to receive from it. The man who learns this becomes lighter. He no longer drags his dreams like anchors. He carries them like clouds, beautiful, temporary, always moving. People may think he's detached, but he's actually fully present. Without the burden of expectation, he can finally see things as they are, not as he wishes them to be. He can love without needing possession, work without needing recognition, live without needing control. This is not indifference, it's clarity. It's what happens when the noise of how it should be finally fades, and reality itself becomes enough. But letting go of expectation is not easy. It's not a switch you flip, it's a slow unlearning. You'll find yourself grasping again, hoping again, wanting things to be a certain way. And that's fine. Awareness grows in the moments when you notice yourself holding on. The key is not to stop wanting, but to stop believing that wanting gives meaning to your life. When you see that, the grip loosens on its own. You realize you were never meant to hold the world still, only to experience it fully, moment by moment. At the root of all control, all anxiety, all endless striving lies one silent terror, uncertainty. The fear that tomorrow might bring something you can't handle. The mind whispers, if I can predict it, I can protect myself. But life doesn't work that way. No one ever became safe by knowing what comes next. They only became numb. The truth is, uncertainty is not the enemy. It's the birthplace of every good thing you've ever known. Without uncertainty, there would be no discovery, no love, no awe. The unknown is not chaos. It is life in its rawest form. Men are taught to plan, to prepare, to anticipate every possible outcome. But have you noticed that the moments that truly changed you, the ones that shaped who you are, were never planned? You didn't schedule the heartbreak that woke you up. You didn't prepare for the failure that humbled you. You didn't predict the conversation that shifted your soul. And yet, those were the moments that made you alive. Uncertainty is not trying to destroy you. It's trying to reveal you. It takes away what's false so that what's real can finally stand. When you live in fear of the unknown, you cut yourself off from the very force that makes life worth living. You begin to exist in a small, predictable circle of repetition, mistaking comfort for meaning. But meaning is not born in comfort. It's born in the fire of not knowing. The man who faces uncertainty stops being a victim of it. He becomes intimate with life itself. He stops asking, what will happen? And starts asking, how will I meet what happens? And that question changes everything. To live fully is to accept that every path contains risk, that every love carries loss, that every breath moves you towards something you cannot yet see. And still, you walk forward. Because once you stop fearing the unknown, you begin to see that it was never darkness, only depth. You realize that the future doesn't need to be controlled, it only needs to be welcomed. The same uncertainty that once frightened you becomes your teacher, showing you that peace was never about knowing what comes next, but trusting that whatever comes, you will be able to meet it as you are. There comes a moment in every man's life when the noise finally becomes unbearable. The constant planning, the endless search for validation, the invisible performance of pretending to have it all under control, it collapses under its own weight. You wake up one morning and realize you no longer recognize the person who's been living your life. The ambitions, the opinions, the mask you wear in public, all of it feels foreign. That is the beginning of awakening, but it feels like death, because in a way, it is. The man you thought you were must die for the man you truly are to appear. But this death is not tragic, it is sacred. It's the burning away of illusions. When you no longer chase the same rewards, people begin to notice. Some will think you've lost interest in life. Others will say you've changed, that you're colder, distant, detached. But what they don't see is the quiet revolution happening inside you. You're no longer seeking approval because you've finally realized you were never incomplete. You don't need to prove your worth. You only need to express it. And in that silence, something begins to bloom. Clarity. A groundedness that no praise or criticism can shake. It's a lonely passage, this death of the old self. You might lose friends, opportunities, even parts of your identity that once gave you a sense of belonging. But you'll gain something far greater, the ability to stand alone without feeling alone. You'll stop being addicted to the noise of validation and begin to hear the subtle rhythm of your own being. That's when life stops being a battlefield and becomes a dialogue. You stop fighting with reality, and reality starts speaking to you in ways you had never noticed before. Through the wind, through coincidence, through silence. Most men run from this moment because it feels like losing everything. But what you lose is only what was never truly yours. The job title, the social mask, the scripted smile, all of them were temporary roles. The man beneath all that is permanent, the one who observes without judgment, who feels without drowning, who acts without needing applause. That is your real nature, untouched, quiet, eternal. Once you meet that self, the chaos outside no longer terrifies you. You realize that life is not something happening to you, but through you. You are not the actor struggling on stage. You are the awareness watching the play unfold. This is what Alan Watts called the great letting go. Not a rejection of life, but a reconciliation with it. When the false self dies, you don't disappear. You finally appear. You begin to laugh at what once tormented you, to forgive what once defined you, to love what once frightened you. You begin to understand that losing control was never the end, it was the doorway. And walking through it, you enter the only place where freedom has ever existed, the present moment. When a man finally surrenders, something extraordinary happens. The fight stops, not because he's been defeated, but because he no longer sees life as an opponent. For years he tried to win against circumstances, to bend the future into his idea of success, to outthink the natural flow of existence. But life cannot be dominated. It can only be danced with. The realization arrives quietly, like the tide coming back to shore, that freedom was never about control, but about participation. You stop being the puppeteer and become part of the play. You move not because you planned it, but because the rhythm moves you. In that surrender, clarity replaces anxiety. The same situations that once made you restless now seem strangely simple. You begin to act without hesitation, speak without fear, and love without calculation. You stop overanalyzing outcomes because you've learned something the world forgot, that wisdom is spontaneous. You don't need to know 10 steps ahead. You only need to meet this moment fully. From there, the next step reveals itself. Life becomes less like a battlefield and more like music, unpredictable but harmonious when you stop trying to conduct it. People may not understand this transformation. They might see you walking away from things they still worship, the approval, the applause, the false stability. They'll call you careless, detached, even arrogant. But deep down, you know what really changed. You stopped kneeling before fear. You stopped needing guarantees. You realized that uncertainty was not your enemy, but your companion, and that by walking with it, you are never really lost. You stopped asking for life to be easy and started asking to be awake within it. And in that awakening, you found what you'd been chasing all along: peace without a reason. The freedom of surrender is not passive. It doesn't mean abandoning responsibility or drifting without purpose. It means doing what must be done without demanding that life pay you back. It's the kind of freedom that makes a man calm in crisis and humble in success, because he knows both are temporary and neither define him. You begin to understand that the true power of a man is not in how much he can hold, but in how much he can let pass through him. You are no longer a dam trying to stop the river. You are the river itself, moving, alive, and unafraid. And when you live like this, something subtle but profound changes in how life meets you. Doors begin to open where before there were only walls. The people meant for you start appearing without effort. Even challenges come with a strange sense of timing, as if the universe were choreographing your steps. You realize that this was never about making life predictable. It was about becoming available to its mystery. And that mystery, once feared, becomes your greatest source of trust. You see that everything, the joy, the pain, the loss, the gain, was never separate from you. It was life inviting you to dance again and again, until you finally remembered that you were never meant to stand still. And so, the key lesson about life is not hidden in sacred books or ancient mountains. It is here, in the simple truth you've resisted all along. Life is not a problem to be solved, but a process to be lived. The man who spends his days chasing control, certainty, or validation dies exhausted without ever having lived. The man who learns to surrender, however, dies alive. He leaves this world the same way he entered it, open, curious, unguarded, and free. That is the quiet paradox at the center of existence. When you stop trying to secure life, life secures you. What once felt like isolation becomes clarity. The solitude that once terrified you turns into companionship with your own being. The losses that once shattered you reveal themselves as necessary clearings. Every ending becomes a beginning in disguise. You stop trying to fix the world and start being part of it, not as a victim or a ruler, but as a participant in its unfolding mystery. You begin to see that everything that has ever happened to you, every heartbreak, every mistake, every confusion, was life teaching you how to let go with grace. So, if you remember only one thing, let it be this: you are not here to hold everything together. You are here to watch it all dance, fall apart, and bloom again, knowing that none of it is outside of you. The fear, the love, the loss, the beauty, they all flow through the same consciousness that looks out through your eyes right now. The lesson is simple, but its simplicity is what makes it powerful. You were never meant to control life. You were meant to experience it. The tighter you grip, the less you live. The more you trust, the more life reveals its intelligence. So take this moment as an invitation to loosen your hold, to breathe, to trust that you are already where you're supposed to be. Share this reflection with someone who needs it, because there's always another man out there, just like you once were, trying too hard to manage what was never his to control. And subscribe if you wish to keep walking this path with us. Every thought you share in the comments, every reflection, keeps this conversation alive. Because that's what we're doing here, not chasing answers, but remembering together what it truly means to be alive.